Today our video will be on the monopoly and how monopolies behave. First of all, let's remember some of the characteristics of a monopoly. First, there is only one seller in the market. Secondly, monopolies are price makers, which means that they have the ability to set price above marginal cost. The market power index is price minus marginal cost over price. 3, there is usually a unique product with monopolies, such as De Beers Diamonds. And lastly, monopolies exist due to high barriers of entry. Examples would be government licenses, resource ownership, patents, copyrights, high startup cost, and in some cases, like a natural monopoly, decreasing average total cost. One of the major differences between a monopoly and a perfectly competitive firm is the relationship that exists between the demand curve and the marginal revenue curve. If you remember, in a perfectly competitive market, price equals demand, which equals average revenue, which equals marginal revenue. As you can see in the diagram, in a monopoly, the relationship between demand and marginal revenue is clearly different. The downward sloping demand curve illustrates the fact that a monopoly is able to set their prices based on their demand. So the downward sloping demand curve illustrates the ability to sell more goods by lowering the price or making more per good by raising the price. Because the monopolist must lower price on all units in order to sell additional units, marginal revenue is less than price, causing the marginal revenue curve to lie below the demand curve. A reminder is the demand curve will be plotted at the actual prices, while the marginal revenue curve would be plotted at the midpoint. Because the demand curve is downward sloping, we need to be reminded about two things. 1, the quantity effect, and 2, the price effect. The quantity effect states that when we sell one more unit, it will increase total revenue by the price the unit is sold at. The price effect tells us that selling the last unit, the monopolist must cut the market price on all units sold, therefore decreasing total revenue. If the price effect outweighs the quantity effect, demand is inelastic. If the quantity effect outweighs the price effect, demand is elastic. And if the price effect and the quantity effect is the same, it is unitary. Now let's look at the graph to help us understand the behavior of a monopolist. A couple of reminders. Again, the demand curve is downward sloping. Marginal revenue lies below demand. And the marginal cost curve represents the supply curve for the firm. A monopolist is going to set the quantity based on our profit maximizing rule. We will produce at the point where marginal revenue intersects marginal cost. Therefore, the monopolist, using our graph, would produce at QF. Once we have established the quantity for the firm, the next decision is what price are we going to be able to set. The price that we will be able to set is determined by the demand for that particular quantity. So as we look at QF and we go up to the demand curve, we could see that PF would be the price that we are able to set. Now that we have our price and quantity, the last piece of information is the average total cost for QF. So as we again look at QF, we will go up to the average total cost curve, and we will notice that average total cost falls below the price that we are able to charge. Due to the fact that price is greater than average total cost, we could see that the monopolist is able to achieve an economic profit. A monopolist will determine its economic profit based on the formula price minus average total cost multiplied by quantity will determine the size of the economic profit. Remember, an economic profit means that the firm is able to make above the normal rate of return. It is also important to realize that the monopolist is able to maintain the economic profit due to the fact of the lack of competition it needs to face. Two areas that you may be asked to distinguish on this graph is one, what is the area on the graph that would represent total cost? Total cost would be the area where average total cost multiplied by QF would represent total cost for the firm. Secondly, you may also be asked to distinguish the area where total revenue exists. Total revenue would exist in this shaded area because total revenue is derived by taking the price multiplied by the quantity. First of all, here are a few other questions that you may need to answer regarding this graph. One area would be, what would be the firm's MES? Again, the firm's MES is the point where marginal cost intersects average total cost. Secondly, and a very important point, would be where marginal cost equals demand. Where marginal cost equals demand is also where supply equals demand, and where marginal cost equals demand, that represents the socially efficient point, where if we asked you for the socially efficient price and quantity, it would be determined by that point. The other area that we will need to address is the point where marginal revenue equals zero. When marginal revenue equals zero, total revenue is maximized. When marginal revenue equals zero, that will also tell us that demand is unitary. When marginal revenue is negative, demand is inelastic. And when marginal revenue is positive, demand is elastic. The biggest concern for monopolies is that monopolies create deadweight loss. The reason that monopolies create deadweight loss are two things. One, price is set above marginal cost. And two, the quantity of the monopoly is less than the socially efficient quantity. So when we look at this area of the socially efficient quantity, and we look at the fact that price is above marginal cost, we could then illustrate the deadweight loss area on our graph. Once again, I hope that this video helped, and if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email me. Stay safe and stay healthy.